Experiment number 12. Redox reactions and electrochemical cells. Objectives. Understand what is a reaction of oxide reduction. Observe, record, and be able to grade the semi-reactions. Analyze the functioning of the alkalimeter. Review previous topics from the chemistry course.
Observations. A few things changed during this experiment. First, on the redox reactions, we used a pair of glass slides instead of the clear sheet protector. Then, on the alkalimeter part, we used a test tube instead of a straw. We had to repeat the alkalimeter test because first time we used a lot of sulfuric acid and it started hitting the test tube.
The first test that we did showed a value of 1 volt, and as we continued with the other tests, the voltage could go from 0.5 to 2 volts. This means that for every certain amount of substances and space of contact, the reaction can generate different voltages.
Conclusion. The objectives were accomplished. Since we understood what is a redox reaction, we also wrote the semi-reactions we analyzed the functioning of the alcoholimeter. And finally, we reviewed topics from the previous course of chemistry. Personally, this was one of the most difficult practices that I have done, because it requires to have knowledge of the previous semester very well landed, and those topics are what I have always caused us, for the practice was not very difficult. The only thing that required was precision for the drops.
We could compare experimentally how different reactives produce chemical energy, which is transformed into electrical energy by a current of electrons. This is important because it's the basis of the batteries we use.
The theory states that for every redox reaction that we make, energy may be produced in different forms. The way in which we take advantage of this is by creating voltage parting from a redox reaction, which at the same time can be used for turning on different components. The experiment helped us a lot to reinforce the redox topic and understand how the method really goes.
The theory said that by creating an electrochemical cell, energy would be generated, and we could put on practice that and see for ourselves that it is true. I remember that on the previous chemistry course, we also did some experiments with galvanic and electrolytic cells. So, one more time, I can put on practice what I learned before. Experiment 13. Electrolysis. Objectives. Carry out the electrolysis of some solutions. Interpret the observations made in terms of the chemical reaction that occurred in the experiment. Understand the electrolysis of a compound. Observations. The experiment said that we were going to use acetate, but instead we used a plastic sheet protector above the rectangles. When we conducted the experiment at first, the mixtures were the same color, but at the time of inducing a current, some began to produce many bubbles and reduce while others separated and showed different colors.
Analysis. These separations happen because we are performing the process of electrolysis. For example, when we're applying a current to the H2O, this will separate the hydrogen and the oxygen, generating bubbles. And the same happens with the other compounds. In the case of the Na2SO4 plus BTB, this is going to separate from the BTB, causing the two colors to seem divided.
Conclusion. The objectives were accomplished since we made the electrolysis of some solutions, we observed and interpreted the experiment in the form of chemical equations, and finally we understood the electrolysis of a compound.
This experiment not only made us remember and reinforce the themes of the previous course, but also allowed us to put in practice this knowledge and to observe in a clear way the process of electrolysis.
This experiment showed us the process of applying a current into a substance to separate it into its elements. This was a way to see experimentally the reaction in electrolysis, which made us understand it better.
Many times we think energy comes only from strange phenomenon on the Earth, and that chemistry can do anything to produce the same energy. This experiment demonstrated exactly the opposite by showing the different ways we can produce electrical energy parting from chemistry reaction.
This experiment reminded me of one we did in the previous chemistry course, where we observed how the teacher made an electrolytic cell, for which she needed a source of energy, a battery. The relation between the previous course and this one is important because thanks to all the theories seen before, we can work and understand what are we doing now. In conclusion, this experiment is essentially a review.